Hi everyone, I'm Jess.
I'm Charlotte.
And this is Irresistible, a podcast brought to you by Drexel University's Music Industry Program. We are so excited for today's first ever episode, and we cannot wait to talk about current issues and topics in the music business as members of Gen Z and the future forces in the industry.
We have two special guests with us today who are also our professors. We have Rob Weitzner, if you want to wave, and then we have Marc Offenbach, if you want to wave. And we're so happy to have you both on today. Do you guys want to give us a little description and introduction about yourself, how you got here, what you do in the industry?
Sure. So I'm Rob Weitzner, and I've been in the industry, since I was 13 years old and started managing bands. But professionally, after graduating college, I started an artist management company, had a wonderful time doing that, sold my company, and then went to business school, trying to leave the music industry. But the music industry is very difficult to leave, particularly when the music is in your heart and soul. And so in the turn of the century, in 1999, I ended up on the digital side of the business at a company called eMusic, and have stayed on the digital side of the business for the last 20 years, working at record labels like TBT Records, starting trade associations like A2IM, the American Association of Independent Music, working for aggregators, a company called IOTA, which was acquired by Sony as part of the Orchard. And then most recently, for the past 12 years, running the North American operation for a company called the State 51 Music Group, where we have a digital supply chain business called Consolidated Independent, CI, which primarily serves the global independent music community, delivering content to DSPs. I'm at Drexel because I love the music industry. I love talking about it, and I love working with young, excited, invigorating folks who want to change the future of the business. So that's me in a nutshell.
Hi, everybody. Marc Offenbach here. As with Rob and I started at the same time teaching, I guess it was 8 years ago, I think. Been in the business for close to 30 years. Pretty much, I'm a musician. I tried to make it as a musician. That did not work out. So I decided to somehow figure out a way to get into the music industry. And just like most everybody who's gotten some sort of success in the music industry, I lied, cheated, and stole, and scraped my way into the business. And started out working in a record shop, working in a retail store, and will never ever forget the joy that I always used to receive when somebody would come in and buy an LP or a CD or a cassette, and scrounge in their kids would come in and scrounge in their pockets and pull out $1 bills and $5 bills, whatever, because they had to have that record that they fell in love with. Which is kind of sort of what it's all about. If you're really passionate, in love, it's the most important thing in your life. You can have a career in the music industry, and you have to work incredibly hard. And if you don't have that kind of passion and desire, you most probably won't fit. Mostly background is working at record labels. My biggest stint was 24 years at Sony Music, working at Columbia Records and Epic Records. I worked at Universal Records, worked at ATO Records, and now my connection with the business is working at Red Light Management as a manager of the lovely Ruth B., who is on the Kelly Clarkson show today at 2 p.m. if you want to tune in.
We love Ruth. We love her.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, but awesome. We're so excited to have you guys today to talk to you guys. And it's so awesome to have this kind of perspective because you guys have taught us the last 3 years, and you guys have gotten to see us grow as students. And it's been an honor to have you guys as our professors. And today we're going to be talking about legacy artists, But before we get into that, we just kind of want to have a little icebreaker question. What have you guys been listening to recently? What are you guys loving recently in terms of music?
Ooh, wow. I've been listening to, geez, a lot of different things. You know, I'm always drawn to older things. You know, the legends. I listen to a lot of legends, but been listening a lot to Cassius Clay. Been listening a lot to Giveon, to kind of R&B leaning artists. You know, but really a lot of legends. But on the new side, I guess those two artists, listen to a lot of Daniel Caesar. Love him. So that's kind of where I'm in a bit of an R&B mode lately, I would say. And there's a British band called Muzz, M-U-Z-Z, which I think has one of the cats from the National in it, I think. But listen, kind of alternative rock. Been listening to them a lot.
A good mix of artists.
Awesome.
What about you?
For
Love
me,
that.
Mark talks about the legends. That's where I typically always am. It's great to be talking about legacy artists because that's really where I live. I constantly have AC/DC on my playlist. I love their new album. I've been digging the new Foo Fighters album. What else have I been listening to that I recently revisited? Some Iron Maiden, one of the bands that really got me into the business professionally, particularly because they were nominated for the Hall of Fame and long overdue. So I've been revisiting the Iron Maiden catalog quite a bit. So that's really where my head's at today.
Awesome. All right. Well, speaking of legacy artists, that is the topic for today's episode. And we thought that both of you would be perfect guests because, like Mark said, he's been in the industry for, dozens of years, working with major labels who a lot of times host these legacy artists. And Rob, you're a huge fan of them and also worked with some of them. So our first question is, what do you think makes a legacy artist?
Well, for me, it's all about longevity and continually delivering great music. The world is an interesting place today because with the advent of the internet, call it fortunate, call it unfortunate. There's many ways to, dice and slice here. But the internet really has snatched power from the great artists and kind of handed it down to a lot of powerless people, I think, because, everybody today, you can create music and it's kind of really easy to create something that sounds good. Whether or not there's talent involved is a different question. And with the internet and with the way things are working today, pretty much, you can become an overnight sensation and you can be Olivia Rodrigo, or you can be Lil Nas X, or, a dozen of other artists that have come out over the years, but how long are they going to last? And what are their following albums, singles going to be like? And, I guess I was teaching a class, I was teaching the big data class, which Charlotte is in, and we were talking about Olivia Rodrigo and how Driver's License is this huge global smash. And the day we were talking about it, I happened to be listening to the radio because I still listen to the terrestrial radio, and they mentioned that it was 50 years ago to the day that I was teaching this class talking about Olivia Rodrigo. It was 50 years ago that What's Going On came out. And as I heard the DJ say that, I'm like, 50 years ago, and then they played the song and I'm listening to the song and I'm going like, this is an unbelievably great song and it's 50 years old. And the question, what's a legend? Where is Olivia Rodrigo going to be in 50 years? Nowhere. I could be wrong, but that's my humble opinion. So to me, it's all about longevity, evergreen, It's about having a really, really distinctive style. To me, a lot of today's top hits all sounds the same. It's all the same instrumentation. It just sounds, just sonically, a lot of it sounds the same to me. So, you know, consistency, longevity, that's kind of the name of the game, being around for 50 years. Like Beethoven, 300 years. Everybody still loves Beethoven.
I mean, I agree. I would echo that. I mean, I think it's all about endurance, but authentic creative endurance you know, that stands the test of time. Mark said the word, you know, evergreen. One of the courses I love teaching is a kind of a history class, Moguls and Madmen, and we look at a number of different executives. And whenever I start to teach that course over the last 2 or 3 years, I just am blown away every time I teach the course when I focus on Motown. And I think about Berry Gordy and his contribution as an executive and the art, I mean, mentioning what's going on in Marvin Gaye, or the Supremes or the Temptations. And those songs are just amazing and incredible songs that stand the test of time in a hit-driven industry where over the decades, there have always been these one-hit wonders that seem to be, you know, that are incredibly interesting in the moment, but totally forgettable in the scope of time. And I don't know. I think one of the things that's interesting about this period of time is that the medium sometimes drives the creativity. And so because we live in this streaming world, this world of constant need for new stimulation and our ability to just skip something. So if the earworm doesn't grab us in 5 seconds, the old, you know, don't bore us, get to the chorus, but it's so exaggerated now. If you don't get it in 5 seconds, you're on to the next thing. So that kind of drives the creative process. And I think for when Mark and I were sort of being impacted by music and wanted to be in the industry and help create it and commercialize it, the canvas that musicians were painting on was much different. The album as a canvas, and therefore they were able to really express themselves in different ways. And that's kind of part of what I think is contributes to longevity and legacy. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this current era of music.
No, those are really awesome points. I totally agree. I think social media, especially in this new age of TikTok, I think we're going to be seeing it even more. We're just consuming smaller and smaller qualities of content at a quicker rate than ever before. And I think this concept of virality and just such a quick overturn of new music and new artists constantly, it's so hard to be a sustainable and a legacy artist, really. But I think for me, I've noticed this trend just, you know, for the last few decades and decades on, I've noticed that the most sustainable artists have been true entertainers. Even if we look today, Beyonce, J-Lo, Bruno Mars, et cetera, we can keep going. The sustainable artists of today are these big entertainers that can put on a show. And I feel like that will probably continue into the future as well. But just to add on to Rob's points, you were just saying how a lot of artists like Marvin Gaye, and a lot of Motown artists you really admire. So my follow-up question is just, what legacy artists in general, what careers do you admire the most?
I mean, a few come to mind. I mean, I start with to me, it all, I mean, I know for many it starts with the Beatles, and it should. But for me, it starts with the Stones. I've always been a Stones guy. And I mean, I joke about them at one level, but here we are in 2021. Keith Richards is still alive. And when you look at the canon of work that the Stones, the Rolling Stones, have endowed the world with. It's just, to me, pretty incredible. Particularly that very intense period of creativity in the late '60s, early '70s with Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers and Exile. So the Stones are one for me. U2 is another act that I look at from both from a business perspective, their long-term relationship with their manager for 35, 40 years, and their ability, regardless of what folks may think about their coming and going relevancy, their ability to stay relevant for so many decades. And I guess a third one I would mention, besides Iron Maiden, who I think they're amazing, but Metallica. I think Metallica is another. They've defined a genre, and even though they've had their ups and downs too, between their business relationship with their manager, their ongoing. I view these artists not just as creative folks, but how have they built and structured their businesses to last and endure over decades of time? And so Stones for 60 years, almost 70 years, kind of freaky. Metallica, U2, those are the bands for me that kind of immediately come to mind.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really great point you're making, because when you guys were talking about being evergreen and that making a legacy artist, it made me think about culture and how these artists have all impacted culture in a huge way. And yeah, no, I definitely agree with all of those choices. Mark, what about you?
I guess like Rob, the 60s British invasion kind of did it for me. So Beatles and the Stones, but I guess the one artist that changed my life was Jimi Hendrix. And I happened to be, I saw Hendrix play live, and I'm a guitar player. So for me, Jimi Hendrix, I would say would be, Beatles and the Stones, that's great. They're like Beethoven and Bach to me. But I would say Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, Michael Jackson, Sade. I love Sade. I love Adele. But I think, when I'm thinking of all of the artists, those legends to me and ones that Rob mentioned, and thinking of today, I guess I'm really, like all of those artists were unbelievably inspirational. I don't get any of that today from anybody. I get some inspiration from hip hop and rap artists when they're, Kendrick Lamar, when they're like talking about the world. But there is no inspiration. And I think there's a deficit of inspiration in a lot of the music because talent, who today is as talented as Michael Jackson? Charlotte, Jessica, who's as talented today as Michael Jackson?
Putting us on the spot there.
Hard to say. We can compare a lot of Michael Jackson's, what he was about, to a lot of artists today. I think in the recent Super Bowl performance of The Weeknd, I think he did a lot of things that were kind of similar to Michael Jackson, a lot of odes to Michael Jackson, but nowhere near the amount of entertainment.
Not even close.
I think and also a great point would be the demographic span of these legacy artists is something that these newer artists today don't have. Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix, all these artists had a huge demographic. They didn't try to pinpoint a certain age group or any kind of group, really. Everybody loved them. And I think that's, like you were saying, Charlotte, tied into the whole culture thing. They really define the culture for everyone. And I think that's a really good point too.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Rob, are you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry, Rob. Did I cut you off?
Specific about the Weeknd, and I'm sorry.
It was mediocre. It was boring.
I'm sorry. I can't. I can't remember a song. There's no hook. There's no songs.
It's actually really interesting because Blinding Lights is apparently like the biggest hit of the century or something along those lines, which really surprised me. I didn't even realize that.
And it's just unbelievable that is, I mean, again, I think I can't actually believe I didn't mention Bruce Springsteen. And I'm like,
Right.
okay. And then The Weeknd. And it just the level of what has become mass success, and what it has just, to me, become so low. The bar is so much lower. I don't know why that is.
I'll tell you why it is, because they're not talented. They're not, as the artists today are just not as talented as artists prior.
But why? I mean, Mark, we say that, and I always get worried that I'm one of the, in my day, but I mean, we grew up with the Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, the Who, Aerosmith, Bob Dylan, Crosby, Stills, and there, and they still are
right
in like Mount Rushmore artists that nothing has come to wipe their memory away.
Right, but it's just so, with digital audio workstations and Pro Tools and Logic, it's too easy. That's what the problem is. All of the legends, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, they're like Steph Curry. They're trying to get that 3-point shot 15 hours a day, every day, until they perfect it. I hate using Olivia Rodrigo, but that's stuck in my mind because that song drives me nuts, in a bad way. But I'm sorry. Olivia Rodrigo, Lil Nas X, but the Zervas, that guy who had the Roxanne song, they don't spend 10, 15 hours a day practicing their art. They don't do that. They go into a studio, the producer, they most probably can't even sing and hit the right notes, I would imagine, and it gets fixed in the mix. So they're not working hard. I think they're not working hard. To me, again, I'm a musician, I used to perform. There used to be a pool of water under me after I did a gig. It's a lot of hard work. The Weeknd at the Super Bowl, that guy was not working hard. Yeah. Michael Jackson, he works hard. I mean, even Bruno Mars, that guy works hard. I think it's the talent, because they don't practice. They just don't work hard.
Well, I have a different idea about that. I don't think it's the talent that's the problem. I think it's the new economics of music that's the problem. Yes. Because of social media, and music is not even tertiary when it comes to, an artist's career anymore. There is an infinite amount of demand that fans have for an artist, and they need to try to keep up with their supply. And there's no quality control anymore. If you have to pump out a song every 3 to 4 months, there's no way that you're going to be able to make good music like that. And it's having to keep up with that is, not allowing these artists to take the time that they genuinely need to make good music. That's what
I completely agree. To add on to that, Charlotte, I think we can see it. I mean, through the past few years, we've noticed that the album is kind of dying out, and people just keep putting out smaller and smaller bodies of work in a quicker amount of time. We can definitely see that. I mean, the sole concept of an album is just going away over time. And I also want to add on to that. I think there's talent around. I think talent is still there, but I just think the music industry's measurement of what we deem as success is so disposable nowadays that we don't even really measure talent as a way to deem something successful in the music industry anymore. So I don't even think people need talent anymore, really, like you were saying, Mark, to be successful in the industry in general.
But listen, I do want to say, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, Jess is very, very talented.
Oh, thank you. I really
and I know for a fact, and I don't know Jess that well, just from school, but I know Jess works really, really hard.
Thank you.
To do what she does. But you can tell. And, I used to go to a show and I would see the artist performing, and you felt the vibe and just the connection that artist was working their ass off to entertain you and give you something as the audience. It was like you would too bad James Brown is dead. But, you know, like James Brown, people like that, just seeing what they did and what they could pull off outside of a recording studio, that is pure, unadulterated, raw talent. And the legends have a way of, you know, being this, you know, 5.5, 6 foot tall man, woman, whatever it is. And somehow they can like shoot that out to, you know, 10,000 people. It's like really, really amazing.
Definitely. No, that's true. And that I'm wondering, do you, because you both of, you know, both of your ballparks when it comes to the legacy artists that you love are all, you know, musicians, and they're, you know, really wonderful at their instrument as if it was, you know, an extension of their body. Do you think a talented artist has to be more than proficient in an instrument, or do you think their talent could be shown through the way that music is, you know, a song is produced, or the way that it's written, you know, the lyrics? Do you think, you know, a 6-stringer piano has a lot to say with, you know, the success and the you know, the skill level and the goodness of a song or album?
I mean, listen to the early Beatles and Stones records, listen to early Bob Dylan records, you know, you could listen to them today and go like, wow, they sound so young. But there was that, you know, je ne sais quoi, there was that thing, the inspiration that they gave. They weren't, you know, the best players when they started out, but they became the greatest players. And it's just the growth of that. I don't think every new fledgling artist has to be the best, you know, instrumentalist or vocalist, but there's that something, you know, in it that connects somehow and makes it, you know, has that longevity and being an evergreen artist, I think is what it is.
And I would be remiss, of course, as you all know me, in talking about one of the bands that impacted me most, which is Kiss. And nobody could argue that they're unbelievable musicians. I mean, I used to make that argument, but I was, you know, 12 years old and didn't know better. I know better now, but nonetheless, what they were incredibly talented at was a almost desperate desire to make sure that when you left their show, you went, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And so they weren't the most amazing players, but together with their fans, they created an incredible experience. And they were, to this theme of working hard at it, that was their level. The level of dedication that they showed to that was just above and beyond anybody else at the time. And it reminds me of a guest, Charlotte, we had yesterday, who kept talking about this notion of, and Jess, you saw too, will and skill. Kind of, it's not just about having some skill, some proficiency or talent. It's about the level of will and determination to rise above and become great. And it's amazing that we have these legacy artists, and it's amazing that we have Hall of Fames. And I think about it not only in music, but I think about it in sports. We always talk about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, if anyone watched The Last Dance series, that guy was completely and utterly devoted to greatness.
Right.
At any cost, but to greatness. Yes, blessed with the ability to leap from the foul line and dunk a ball, but you know, it's not just about talent, and so many, because it is much easier today. Right. There's this impression that, you know, I spend 90 minutes on my DAW, I pay $19 to DistroKid, and bang, I'm on Spotify, baby.
Right. I'm famous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad. I'm a Ariana Grande basher.
No.
She's got a great voice. Great voice. But here's the difference, legends and today. I went to see Ariana Grande, Madison Square Garden, packed house. First of all, it was Ariana Grande and like 20 dancers and fire and all this. There weren't even musicians on the stage. So anyway, the show ends, and there's some audience, you know, yelling, screaming, clapping, but I would say it lasted maybe a minute, and then the lights go up. You know, Rob and I have been to shows where the audience goes insane, crazy for 25 minutes because they want more. There is no artist today, or, you know, when I've seen Prince, it doesn't happen today because it's not that exciting. It's not inspirational. It's like, I went to the Ariana Grande concert. I was there. I saw her. Great. But you don't walk out of there going like, oh my God, that like was the best show I've ever seen in my life. And that's the way it should be. And that's the way it's always been for the artists that I've seen. It's kind of like my head explodes, and it was like, I can't stop thinking about it. My friends and I talk about the show for like 2 weeks after it happens. That's what music should be. And it is not that much like that today, I don't think.
Yeah, those are really good points. And that made me think about, you know, are things almost too technical, too calculated nowadays? But I actually did want to ask, I just thought of her, you know, as we were speaking. What do you guys think about Lady Gaga? Do you think she's going to be a legacy artist? Because she comes to mind automatically if I do think of somebody that is going to be super sustainable within the next few decades.
I mean, I think she combines a lot of what we just said. She, from the get-go, wanted it, but knew how much it took to not just want it, but to work for it. So she has the desire, she has the will, she has been blessed with unbelievable talent, but she does not take that for granted. She's shown a wider skill set. So I think Gaga is one of the artists of the century, early part of the century, who will definitely, if she wants to continue, which she seems to, she is a legacy artist.
Absolutely. And Beyonce is going to be going on for many, many, many years. Gaga is great. She's incredible.
Yeah, I think Gaga's story is really interesting because she definitely had to prove herself in the industry. I think she brought that shock factor, you know, about a decade or so ago, and people weren't so sure about her. But I think as she's evolved, she's been able to balance a sense of innovation and also evolving with the times. And her demographic has widened so much, and she's, I would say, has defined the culture at every new standpoint of the last decade or so, which I think is so awesome. But I think so many more people have gotten onto her team or on her fan base, as we've seen over the last few years, which I think is definitely going to define the next few decades for her as well.
I mean, I totally agree with that. She was a pop artist at a rapidly changing time that was just shamelessly, or not shamelessly, she was just like so herself. And she was not afraid to be whatever she wanted to be, and was cognizant of the fact that that wasn't going to be okay, which drove her to work even harder. I mean, we case studied her with one of Rob's classes last quarter for me. I think Jess might be taking it next quarter. But it's fascinating, and she really just worked her ass off to do exactly what she needed to do. And she is, for an artist that has such a large cult, you know, fan base, she has never been afraid to just completely change her narrative, to completely go in a different direction. And there are so many artists out there who are scared to do so because their fans are comfortable in, you know, the brand and music that they're making currently. And, you know, being able to have the courage to step out and make an album for yourself rather than for your fans, at the risk and expense of perhaps not pleasing, you know, a majority of your demographic. She's always done that. And I mean, I think she's just so admirable and outstanding.
I actually do think that's a really interesting question to ask really quick. Sorry, Mark, for cutting you off. Do you think she can only do that because she has the power to do that and she has the fan base behind her to do that? Like, do whatever she wants, put out anything she wants?
I think she has the power to do that, and innovation is another example of what a legend needs to have to become a legend. But I think it works because it's really good, you know. So I think she can go anywhere and do anything because she's going to work hard at it, and she's going to really dig down deep inside. So I think she's got a great platform, and she'll continue to make great music. I think, Taylor Swift, she's going to be a legend. Taylor Swift is going to be around a long time, I think.
I agree with Taylor. I just also to Gaga. I mean, I think the analog there's two obvious analog. One very obvious is Madonna, but the one I think is really even closer because of the artistry involved is David Bowie. I think that Gaga is sort of the neck is you can draw a line right from Gaga to Bowie, just in their ability to reinvent, to stay at the edge, to push forward fashion and art and music. That really was what Bowie did. That's what Gaga did. Madonna certainly does it, and to an extent. I'm not sure as deeply as Bowie or Gaga, but certainly does that same thing. And so Gaga to me is right there. But I also agree with Taylor Swift. I know it's sometimes controversial. I think she is incredibly smart, incredibly talented, and the future is just in front of her. And she already has. I mean, she already has a body of work, and there's plenty more to come from her. You just know it. You can feel it that she's around for a long time.
Definitely. I mean, she was bound to come up in conversation if we're talking about legacy artists. And actually, on the topic of Taylor Swift, that brings us, perfectly into our next question, which is, what current artists do you think are on the way to becoming legacy artists? Because I think in the time of social media and, incredibly dedicated fan bases, it could be challenging to clear out the blurred line between being prolific because your fan base needs you to be, but also being incredibly talented and culture changing and shocking and, evergreen. So who do you guys think? I'm curious.
I mean, I'm hoping it's Billie Eilish.
Yes.
And I can't wait. What's today's date? The documentary comes out the 26th. I can't wait to see that. But I'm hoping Billie Eilish continues to kind of do what she does and just get better and better. I think she's pretty phenomenal. I don't know if you guys have ever seen her live, but incredible live. And she's real, she's that very different, I'm doing it and I'm doing it my way. So I think she would be one for me. I'd like to think that she might become a legacy artist.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's early days and it's hard to tell. I thought Lorde might have had a chance, but and she still does. She's so young, but she needs to kind of get it together. It seems to me. I'm just not. I thought she really had a chance. Obviously, Gaga and Taylor Swift. We've spoken about them. I mean, I consider them current, and I would throw Adele in there possibly. As well, that has a shot. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but I still think the most important legacy artists in 50 years are going to be the ones from 50 years ago.
Right.
That's for you, Jess and Charlotte, and that's the challenge for all of you, because this business is based on kind of the new and the current, but more and more of it is going to be based on the catalog, because unless we figure out ways to help artists become more prolific and great, more profound, not just prolific, but profound, then, I mean, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Adele, Billie Eilish, and Lady Gaga, if that's all that comes out of the last 2 decades, that's not a really great hit rate for the industry.
Right. But Eminem.
Yeah, he could have been. I don't know.
Yeah, Eminem. I don't know. Kendrick Lamar, if he can make some more music, which would be nice. But it's, as Rob said, I think, it's going to be a lot of the artists that have been around for 40, 50 years that are going to continue. I mean, look at Queen. Queen, still has an album in the top 25 on the Billboard charts. It's crazy.
That is true.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, they're still in the charts. I mean, the movie just came out, Bohemian Rhapsody, which I think almost open them up to a new generation, such a younger generation of people, which keeps them even more sustainable, as we can see going on. So I think that's really awesome. And it's going to be interesting to see who that happens to in the future with these current artists now.
Definitely.
What I think a lot of the majors are doing now is they're looking at these catalogs and looking at Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man. Those are great examples of trying to make vibrant Elton John or Queen, trying to take a catalog of 30 or 40 years and bring it into the future in a new way through new vehicles. So we're seeing an explosion of documentaries, which I love. It's great to see all that. And we're seeing all these films, and a lot of that's the majors are trying to find these ways of repurposing these legacy artists in new ways to introduce them to new generations, because maybe they have a sense that, we have Olivia Rodrigo, but we, as Mark said, I mean, no one's going to care in a year. So, but people are going to care about Fleetwood Mac or Queen or Elton John.
Definitely. I think it's interesting that neither of you have brought up Amy Winehouse or Kanye West. What do you guys think about either of them?
I love Amy Winehouse, but she's not able to continue her legacy. I think had she navigated those troubles in a different and survived, she was great. She was unique, and I do think she was a real artist.
Yep.
But she met with a fate that, I mean, because you can't say to me like Nirvana, they left a legacy, but there's not enough of a body of work there to say much. And so with the same thing with Amy Winehouse, I just unfortunately, and I mean, Mark, I don't know what you think about Kanye. I don't even want to talk about
Kanye. He's a maniac. Yeah. So for me, it's difficult for me to admire artists who are jerks. I think Kanye's a bit of a jerk. I think he's a real player, and he's all over the place. Graduation's an unbelievable record. And he's made some great music, and now he's going into the whole gospel Christian thing, which is cool for him, and all good, but he's nuts. I mean, I don't trust him.
I have a hot take about him.
Yeah.
My hot take is that he is going to go on to be a legacy artist. And here is why. He makes, objectively, I think, is an outstanding. He's one of my favorite rappers. As much as I also agree he is going insane, he's really talented, and he has been really talented. And he's had some albums that were better than others, but he is within a threshold of quality control that is of high quality, I think. And I think an issue right now is that because he is inherently a lunatic, he is going through like phases of bipolar disorder on social media, which is awful and not a good idea. And I think that is, making him really off-putting to a lot of people. But I mean, fingers crossed that he will, find a way out and like figure out how to get a hold of himself, hopefully with medication, because, you kind of need it when you have bipolar disorder. And I think once he gets himself sorted, I think he has the threshold to become a legacy artist. I think he does. So we will see. I think it's 50-50.
That's really interesting, because I want to bring up 2 points. I think Kanye West is multifaceted in the sense that he also has a huge empire with his fashion line and everything regarding that. Maybe that could be even more sustainable than his music career. Who knows? But I think there's also something to be said about mental health in the music industry in terms of sustainability. Because of social media, everything's more amplified than ever before. And these artists that might be going through things like bipolar disorder, have a screen and have a computer right in front of them to just say whatever they feel, which could put them in a worse light than they were in if they didn't have social media to just amplify themselves like that. So if we look back at a lot of rock artists in the last few decades that went through drug abuse or mental health issues, if they had social media like artists do now, do you think they would have abused it as well? And they might not be as sustainable either?
That's a great question.
I mean, I think, I mean, for me, I'm going to back up and answer from just a general perspective on social media, which is growing up, artists were mysterious and unattainable. They were not you and me, they were separate. When Led Zeppelin was coming to town, it was like the gods had descended from the heavens and were there for a brief moment and then disappeared, and they were gone. And you could, they were, there was mystique, there was separation. There wasn't this constant 24/7 look into their, you know, that they, you know, have to eat and do everything else that we all have to do. So social media has lifted the curtain. We now know the Wizard of Oz is just that person back there, and that sort of diminishes artists in a way. And that's unfortunate, because I grew up with artists that had mystique, and that was part of the attraction. So that's one piece of it. And then there's the other element, which is some things should be private. I mean, and people don't, I mean, TMI is TMI. And there's a lot of TMI going on out there under the guise of, to bring it back to what we were talking about with Gaga. Gaga used social media brilliantly because she was authentic and was able to, at the same time, achieve mass intimacy with her base of monsters, of little monsters. But not everyone should be doing that. And so I don't know what artists back in the day would have been doing with social media. It would have been really scary had they had that platform.
Yeah, because you got, you know, artists back in the day, you know, it was the drug culture.
Yeah.
And I'm sure artists were in and out of rehab and got screwed up and all that, but you just didn't know about it. Mainly really because all you were interested in was their music. It was like pure, all I care about is the music, all I care about listening to the music, you know, who produced the record, where they recorded the record, who wrote what. That was, the focus was all musically focused. It kind of wasn't focused on what they're doing on holiday in the south of France, even though that might pop up here and there. Whereas today, you know, everybody seems to think that they need to tell everybody everything about their lives. And that's, you know, that's, I guess, the difference between 50 years ago and 40 years ago. And today it's different. So the culture is very, very different. The platforms are all different. So people act differently. But mystery, as Rob said, huge, huge, huge part of kind of like the mystique of who these people were.
Definitely. I think it's really interesting that you both bring that up, because you say mystique, and I wrote about in, you know, a homework assignment for Rob a couple weeks ago, scarcity tactics and, you know, ways to innovate, you know, a career in the current day. And I talked about Harry Styles as an example for that, because for a fan base that is so demanding and so, you know, strident about wanting content constantly, it seems like he just doesn't care about that, which I think is wonderful. He is so scarce on social media. And I think what, you know, artists and their teams might fail to realize currently is that if you have an artist that is so in demand right now, barely using social media, it's going to pack such a punch to whatever that they do in the future. And we see his career right now, and like, yeah, he's entertaining, he's talented, you know, he's fashionable, but I don't know if he has what it takes to be a legacy artist, but I think the way he's using social media is definitely helping him, you know, go on that track. So I think scarcity is incredibly important. And I do think that I think artists should be less scared to, you know, make their fans angry with not being on social media enough.
Yeah.
Because I think artists don't advocate for themselves enough about also being people. And I think that if they did, you know, their fans hopefully would be mature enough to take a step back and be like, oh, wait, maybe I don't have to know what you were doing at like 7:24 p.m. yesterday, you know?
Yeah, but I think that's the problem with the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the problem with the landscape, as I said before, is that it's not only about the music, and that's all it should be about.
Exactly.
Like, what do you write? What comes out of your mouth when you open your mouth? How do you play the guitar or the piano, whatever it is? That is the be all. That is the essence. The reason why we're in the music business is because we hear something and we go, OMG. Take social media out of the context of the majority of artists today, and they're pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the only way Kanye West is interesting is because of his ranting and raving. If you take that out of the picture, he's got these great albums and this great music, and that would be a great thing. But due to the fact that the social media world is there, it's kind of like, well, we have to use it and it's there. But if you take it out of the mix, you know, I think the majority of artists today would be really, really boring. Music.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I totally agree with you. And Charlotte, you were saying scarcity, these scarcity tactics. I think we have very few examples of that today, but another artist that just came to mind was Frank Ocean. I feel like he disappeared, reappeared, and you have to have a certain kind of sustainability already to pull that off. And I feel like that's so rare today, but he just immediately came to mind when we talk about scarcity because he's still able to have this huge hype around when he releases something and then he'll just go away again. And I think that's really interesting to see because not a lot of artists can pull that off these days. So, yeah.
Definitely. And I think one of the problems that come with scarcity is that you need to figure out how to walk that line between wanting people to want you to release stuff like last year and between like people being like, you know what, I give up. I'm going to go listen to, you know, whoever instead. And I think Frank Ocean is, you know, walking that line really, you know, things could change, you know, every day for him about whether or not people are going to care. I think Rihanna and Lorde are both in those situations. I saw Lorde
Really?
in 20. I'm a huge fan of her. I saw her in 2017 at Prudential, and that show was insane. I mean, she is just so wonderful and has just this immense artistic vision. And I think she is definitely, you know, her next album, whenever it comes out, is going to be outstanding. Hopefully, you know, she gets the attention and critical acclaim that it's going to deserve. But the fact that she doesn't use social media, I think, is not, you know, playing in her favor when it comes to being a legacy artist, which stinks. But, you know, I think her musicality is so strong that, you know, hopefully she'll be able to, you know, stand strong enough with her albums and music alone. But yeah, she came to mind. She's just insane. And I think she could get there, hopefully.
Good point. Frank Ocean, good point.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, he is we'll see what happens with him. It's been a while. He loves to just, you know, drop a song and dip. So we'll see what goes with that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it was so amazing to have you both on today. We're so appreciative for you guys to be our first guest on Irresistible. This has been such an amazing experience, and we're so excited to put this out and have this conversation with you guys. We have you guys as professors for the last 3 years, but it's also so nice to just have these conversations and expand on what you guys have taught us in the last few years. So we want to thank you guys again. Make sure you tune in to our next episode coming out in a week or two, and check out all of our social medias for all of our updates regarding our next few episodes. But thank you so much again for listening.
Thank you. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.